My name is Camille Monroe, the woman my husband tried to erase, and the woman who had him handcuffed in the middle of Savannah's most prestigious gala. That night, I walked into the ballroom in a red dress like fire, took the microphone, looked him dead in the eye, and said, "You already tried to destroy me. I survived." Seconds later, the FBI walked in. And from that moment on, the name Camille Monroe was never forgotten. Before I share the full story, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Hit like and subscribe if you've ever made it through something you weren't sure you could. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happens next. The heirloom china didn't break when Brenton threw the shopping receipts on the dining table. It should have. Lord knows something should have shattered that night besides me. But the Ashworth family china, passed down through 3 generations of his mother's family, stayed intact. Perfect. Unblemished. Everything I no longer was. Oh, $73 at the art supply store? His voice cut through our Savannah mansion's silence like Spanish moss couldn't muffle the contempt. What could you possibly need with watercolors, Camille? Planning to finger paint with the twins? I kept folding the dinner napkins. Cream linen, monogrammed with an elaborate A that once made me feel like I belonged to something greater. Now it felt like a scarlet letter marking my diminishment. "The children enjoy painting," I said quietly. My hands didn't shake anymore when he got like this. After 12 years, they'd learned. "The children," he laughed, that bitter sound I'd grown to recognize as the prelude to cruelty. "That's all you are now, isn't it? A glorified babysitter living off my success." I could have reminded him that I'd been offered a fellowship at SCAD before we married, that my paintings once hung in Charleston galleries, that I'd given up my maiden name, Monroe, along with everything else that made me myself. But I'd learned that defending myself only gave him more ammunition. "You've let yourself go, Camille." He walked around the table, and I felt him cataloging my flaws. The 10 pounds that wouldn't leave after the twins, the roots showing in my honey blonde hair, the Target dress I wore because designer clothes felt like costumes in my own home. "You're 34, not dead. Though looking at you, who could tell the difference?" The napkin in my hands was perfectly folded. I set it down and finally looked at him. Brenton Ashworth, 42, silver threading through his temple in that distinguished way that made his female clients flutter. His Armani suit cost more than I spent on groceries in 3 months. "The Whitmore Charity Gala is tomorrow night," he continued, adjusting his cufflinks. "I'll be taking Tessa. At least she understands the importance of maintaining appearances." Tessa. His 26-year-old assistant with an MBA from Emory and legs that went on forever. I'd seen her at his office Christmas party, watched how she laughed at his stories like they were original, not recycled from the country club circuit. "Of course," I said. He paused at the doorway, expecting tears, maybe a scene, some evidence that I still had enough spirit left to break. But I just stood there, hands steady on the back of a dining chair that cost more than most people's monthly rent. "You're pathetic," he said finally. "I don't even recognize the woman I married." The front door closed with the decisive sound of a man who believed he'd won. In the silence that followed, I walked to the antique mirror in the hallway, another Ashworth heirloom, and studied my reflection. He was right about one thing. The woman he'd married was gone. That 22-year-old girl with paint under her fingernails and dreams bigger than Savannah's social registry had disappeared somewhere between the first miscarriage and the 4th anniversary dinner he'd forgotten. But for the first time in years, I smiled. Not the polite society smile I'd perfected for his business dinners, or the brave smile I wore for the twins. This was something else entirely. "Good," I whispered to my reflection. "Then I'll see you there." I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, his bedroom, really, since I'd been sleeping in the guest room for months, and pulled out the laptop he didn't know I still used. The email from my cousin Monique in Charleston was still in my drafts, unsent for 6 months. "Whenever you're ready to stop dying slowly, call me." I hit send and added 3 words. "I'm ready now." The twins were asleep down the hall, 8 years old and blissfully unaware that their perfect suburban life was built on quicksand. Tomorrow, their father would parade his mistress through Savannah's most prestigious social event, while their mother stayed home like a good little ghost. Except I wouldn't be home, and I wouldn't be a ghost. I opened the closet safe where Brenton kept emergency cash and our passports. The credit card he'd given me for emergencies only was there too. Well, this certainly qualified. Tomorrow night, Camille Ashworth would disappear, and someone else, someone I used to know, would take her place. Charleston was only 2 hours from Savannah, but driving there at dawn felt like crossing into another country. The twins were with our housekeeper, Rosa, who'd raised her eyebrows when I said I needed a day for personal appointments, but didn't question it. Rosa had worked for the Ashworths for 15 years. She'd seen enough wives come and go to know when not to ask questions. Monique's studio sat in the French Quarter, squeezed between a vintage boutique and a cafe that served beignets that could make you believe in God again. The sign read Reinvention in gold script. No last name, no explanation, just that one word that promised everything. Jesus Christ, Camille. Monique opened the door before I could knock. You look like a soccer mom who got lost on her way to Whole Foods. I laughed, actually laughed, for the first time in months. Monique stood there in leather pants and a silk blouse, her natural hair crowned like royalty, looking exactly like the family disappointment who'd built a styling empire from scratch. That bad? I asked. Honey, that's not even bad. That's invisible. She pulled me inside, past mirrors and mannequins and racks of clothes that looked like they belonged in magazines I'd stopped reading. The back room was different. Intimate, with overstuffed chairs and photographs covering every wall. Women before and after, but not like those tacky makeover shows. These transformations went deeper. You could see it in their eyes. Tell me everything, Monique said, pouring bourbon even though it was barely noon. And I mean everything, not the Facebook version. So I did. Every small cruelty, every diminishment, every night I'd stood in my kitchen at 2 a.m. wondering if this was all there was. I told her about Tessa and the gala and how Brenton had trained me to be grateful for his contempt. That motherfucker, she said when I finished. You know what the problem is? You've been playing defense so long you forgot you could score. She stood, walked to a locked cabinet, and pulled out a card. This isn't just about a dress and some highlights, baby. This is about resurrection. You sure you're ready? The card had 3 names. A lawyer named Catherine Ramsey, a forensic accountant named David Kim, and someone listed only as MT Digital Archaeology. What's digital archaeology? I asked. Everything your husband thinks he deleted still exists somewhere. MT finds it. Monique sat back down. But that's step 2. Step 1 is remembering who the hell you are. She led me to a full-length mirror and stood behind me. What do you see? A tired mother of 2 who... Wrong. Her hands went to my shoulders. Look again. Not at what he made you. At what's still there underneath. I looked harder. Past the exhaustion and suburban camouflage, searching for the girl who used to stay up all night painting, who'd once told a gallery owner to go to hell when he suggested she paint more commercial pieces. There she is, Monique whispered. Hey, girl, been a while. The stylist in her took over then. We're cutting this hair, not a mom bob, don't panic. Something that moves like you own the room. The color stays blonde, but honey, we're going white gold. Expensive, untouchable. The dress for tomorrow. Red, but not trying too hard red. The kind of red that makes people forget there are other colors. I can't afford. You're taking his emergency credit card. This is an emergency. That man has been slowly murdering you for years. Consider this self-defense. She was already pulling clothes, holding them up, and discarding them with surgical precision. You're not going to that gala as the wronged wife. You're going as the woman who's about to flip the whole damn table. What if I can't pull it off? Monique stopped and looked at me. Really looked at me. Camille Monroe painted a portrait that made the mayor's wife cry in public. Camille Monroe told Senator Walsh his taste in art was pedestrian at his own fundraiser. That woman is still in there. We're just going to remind everyone, including you, that she never really left. The bourbon burned warm in my chest. Outside, Charleston's afternoon light painted everything golden, like the whole world was holding its breath for what came next. "One more thing," Monique said, pulling out her phone. "When's the last time you logged into your old email? The one from before you married him?" 12 years ago? She smiled like a cat who'd found cream. "Perfect. Because everyone you used to know, including that gallery owner from Atlanta who's been trying to find you, they're all still there, waiting." I left Savannah while the morning mist still clung to the Spanish moss. Rosa had the twins for their Saturday activities: soccer for Mason, ballet for Mia, and Brenton was golfing with clients. The house felt like a museum of someone else's life as I moved through it one last time, gathering evidence of my own erasure. The lawyer's office occupied a restored Victorian in Charleston's historic district. Catherine Ramsey didn't look like the kind of woman who destroyed men in court. She looked like someone's favorite aunt, soft-spoken with reading glasses on a pearl chain, which is probably why she'd never lost a divorce case in 20 years. "Mrs. Ashworth," she said, not standing when I entered. Or should I say Ms. Monroe? "How did you—" Monique called. "She also sent me your prenup." "Ours." Catherine pulled out a document I'd signed 12 years ago, young and in love and certain Brenton would never invoke its terms. "Your husband was very thorough, almost too thorough." She flipped to a page covered in highlights. "See this clause about property transfers? He required your signature for any movement of marital assets over $50,000. Smart for protecting his wealth. Stupid because it means every transfer has a paper trail." "I don't understand." "You will." She pulled out another folder. "David Kim will explain the financial forensics, but first, I need you to tell me about the Ashworth Foundation." My stomach dropped. The foundation was Brenton's pride, a tax shelter dressed up as charity that funded arts programs for underprivileged youth. I'd helped establish it back when I thought we were building something meaningful together. "I was listed as co-founder," I said slowly. "But Brenton removed me from the board 3 years ago, said it would be better for taxes." Catherine's smile could have frozen hell. "He said that, did he? Do you remember signing the removal papers?" I thought back. There'd been so many documents over the years, things Brenton pushed across the dinner table between discussions of the twins' schedules and household budgets. Maybe? He always handled the business side. "MT pulled the digital records," Catherine said, sliding a tablet across the desk. "This is your signature on the removal document." I looked at the screen. It was my name, but that's not how I sign my name. The C is wrong, and I always loop my L's. "Bingo." Catherine leaned back. "Your husband forged your signature to remove you from a foundation where you were entitled to 50% of the proceeds. That's fraud. Federal fraud, specifically, since the foundation takes donations across state lines." The room tilted. "He wouldn't—" "Oh, honey, they always do." She pulled out another document. "This is more interesting. 3 months ago, he transferred $500,000 from the foundation to a private trust in Tessa's name, listed as consultant fees." I thought about our joint account, how Brenton monitored every purchase, questioned every expense over $20, how he'd made me return a winter coat because it was frivolous while gifting his mistress $500,000. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Everything. Every document you can access, every email, every text. But quietly. He can't know what we're building." David Kim arrived then, a soft-spoken Korean man who looked like he should be teaching calculus, not destroying financial empires. He spread spreadsheets across Catherine's conference table like tarot cards, revealing the future. "Your husband has been very clever," he said. "But clever people make the best mistakes. He's been washing money through the foundation for Senator Walsh's campaign. Small amounts, nothing that would trigger automatic reviews. But when you add them up, how much? 2.3 million over 5 years. I stared at the numbers until they blurred. All those nights, Brenton called me paranoid for questioning the foundation's expenses. All those times he'd patronized me about not understanding business. "There's more," David continued. "The house in Savannah? It's titled in a trust he created. You're not listed as a beneficiary." "But we bought that house together. My inheritance from my grandmother was the down payment." Catherine and David exchanged glances. "We'll get it back," Catherine said. "All of it. But Camille, you need to understand. Once we file these documents, once we alert the authorities, there's no going back. Your husband won't just be divorced, he'll be destroyed. I thought about the twins, about the life they knew crumbling. Then I thought about Tessa at the gala tonight, wearing jewelry bought with money stolen from charities meant to help children like the students I once taught. Good, I said, and meant it. Now, let me tell you about the recording I have of him discussing Senator Walsh's appreciation for the foundation's support. Both lawyers leaned forward. Outside, Charleston's church bells rang the hour, and I realized I had 4 hours until the gala. 4 hours until Camille Ashworth disappeared forever. The historic Savannah Conservatory glowed like an antebellum dream, all white columns and golden light spilling onto manicured gardens. Valet attendants in crisp uniforms helped Savannah's elite from their luxury cars while I sat in my rented BMW 3 blocks away, watching through the live stream on the venue's society page. There he was, Brenton in his custom tuxedo, Tessa on his arm in a champagne dress that tried too hard. She was beautiful, I'd give her that, but she wore her beauty like armor, desperate and defensive. I recognized that look. I'd worn it for 12 years. The red dress Monique had chosen moved like liquid fire when I stood. Not the scream for attention red of a woman scorned, but the deep, expensive crimson of old garnets and vintage wine, the kind of red that whispered power instead of shouting it. My hair, now platinum touched with gold, falling in waves that suggested I'd just left someone's bed, caught the light as I walked. The heels were higher than anything I'd worn in years, but my body remembered how to move in them. Muscle memory from when I was Camille Monroe, the girl who could work a gallery opening like a conductor leading a symphony. The valet's eyes widened when I stepped out. "Good evening, Mrs. Monroe," I said, handing him the keys. "Camille Monroe." I'd timed it perfectly. Cocktail hour was ending, guests moving toward the ballroom for dinner. I entered through the garden entrance, the one used for smaller events, avoiding the main reception where Brenton would be holding court. The first person to see me was Judge Harrison's wife, Margaret. Her champagne glass stopped halfway to her lips. "Camille? My God, is that you?" "Hello, Margaret." I smiled, the kind of smile I'd forgotten I could produce. Warm, but untouchable. "Lovely event. But Brenton said you were indisposed." "Did he?" I touched her arm lightly, conspirationally. "You know how men are. They assume we're indisposed when we're just choosing our moments." She laughed, uncertain but intrigued. Within minutes, word spread like fire through drought-dried gossip. Camille Ashworth was here, and she looked like that. I made my way through the crowd, greeting people I'd been trained to ignore my own presence around. Each conversation was strategic, each laugh calculated. I was hunting, and my prey didn't know it yet. "Camille?" The voice made me turn. Lillian Whitmore, 73 years old and arguably the most powerful woman in Savannah society, stood there in her signature purple silk. "Mrs. Whitmore." I didn't curtsy or simper. I met her eyes directly. "You look—" She paused, searching for words. "Transformed." Sometimes destruction is just renovation waiting to happen. She studied me for a long moment, then smiled. The real smile she reserved for equals, not supplicants. "Would you join me at Table 1? I find myself in need of interesting conversation." Table 1, the power table, where Brenton had never managed to secure a seat despite years of donations and desperate networking. I would be honored. We walked together through the ballroom doors, her hand on my arm like a queen presenting her chosen successor. The room hushed. 300 of Savannah's finest suddenly forgot their conversations. I saw him before he saw me. Brenton at table 7. Respectable but not elite. Tessa beside him giggling at something Senator Walsh was saying. Then Tessa's eyes found mine and widened with recognition. "Oh my God," I heard her whisper. "Mrs. Ashworth?" The way she said it, not Camille, but Mrs. Ashworth, told me everything. She'd known all along. She'd known she was the other woman, had probably gotten off on it, until now. Brenton turned in slow motion, his face cycling through confusion, recognition, and rage, before settling on a mask of polite society. He started to rise to come toward me, but Lillian's voice cut through the room. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin dinner, I want to recognize someone special. Camille Monroe, some of you know her as Camille Ashworth, has agreed to share her remarkable story with us tonight. As many of you don't know, she was the true co-founder of the Ashworth Foundation and has some exciting news about its future direction. The microphone appeared in my hand like destiny. The room waited. Brenton's face had gone white. Good evening, I began, my voice carrying to every corner. I'm here tonight to talk about resurrection and fraud, but mostly resurrection. Tessa knocked over her wine glass. The red spread across the white tablecloth like blood, like prophecy, like justice beginning its slow, inexorable work. You see, I continued into the microphone, my voice steady as cathedral bells, the Ashworth Foundation was built on a beautiful lie. The lie that charity can wash clean any sin, that donation receipts can paper over embezzlement, that good intentions excuse fraudulent signatures. Brenton was on his feet now, his face cycling through shades of red I'd never seen before. Camille, you're clearly unwell. Sit down, Brenton. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. You had your 12 years. This is my 10 minutes. Lillian Whitmore stood beside me, her presence a shield of social authority that even Brenton couldn't pierce. The room held its breath. 3 years ago, my signature was forged to remove me from the foundation I co-created. I have the forensic documents here. I pulled the folder from my clutch, holding it up. Every transfer, every diverted donation, every dollar that went to personal trusts instead of art programs for underprivileged children. This is ridiculous, Brenton started toward the stage. Including, I continued, letting my voice carry over his, the $500,000 transferred to a trust in Miss Tessa Williams' name. Tessa, who's sitting at table 7 in a dress that costs more than most teachers make in a month. Tessa, who I taught senior year at Savannah Day School, who I protected from a cheating scandal that would have destroyed her college prospects. Tessa's face crumbled. She looked 26 going on 17, all her sophisticated armor falling away. You were my favorite teacher, she whispered, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. You were the only one who believed in me. I still believe in you, Tessa, which is why I'm giving you this chance to return the money and walk away. The side door opened then, and 2 men in dark suits entered. Not dramatically, not aggressively, just professionally. FBI, their badges discreet but visible. Mr. Ashworth, one said quietly, we need to speak with you about the Foundation's financial records. Brenton's mask finally cracked completely. You called the FBI? You vindictive? I didn't call anyone. I set down the microphone and walked toward him, my heels clicking against marble like a countdown. I simply provided documentation to concerned parties who were already investigating Senator Walsh's campaign finances. Funny how corruption connects, isn't it? Pull one thread, and the whole suit unravels. We stood face to face, the entire room watching. This man who'd made me feel small for so long suddenly seemed diminished, ordinary. Just another middle-aged criminal in an expensive tuxedo. The children, he hissed. Think about what you're doing to our children. Our children will see their mother refuse to be erased. They'll learn that integrity matters more than reputation. They'll understand that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stop pretending everything is fine. The agents flanked him, professional and discreet. Mr. Ashworth, please come with us. As they led him out, he turned back once. I'll destroy you for this. You already tried, I said. I survived. The ballroom erupted the moment the door closed behind them. Scandal, delicious and fresh, served hot with the seafood course. But Lillian Whitmore raised her hand and silence fell like snow. Ladies and gentlemen, the gala will continue. The Ashworth Foundation, however, will not. I'm pleased to announce that its legitimate assets will be transferred to a new organization, the Monroe Fund for Arts Education, directed by Camille Monroe. Applause started slowly, then built like thunder. Not everyone applauded. Some of Brenton's business partners looked murderous, but enough did. More than enough. Tessa appeared at my elbow, mascara streaming. Mrs. Ash, Ms. Monroe, I'm so sorry. I didn't know about the forgery, the fraud. I thought, God, I was so stupid. You were 26 and ambitious, I said. He was 42 and predatory. That's not stupidity, that's targeting. She pulled out her phone, fingers shaking. I'm transferring the trust money back right now, all of it. I haven't spent any of it, I swear. It felt wrong. I watched her complete the transfer, then did something that surprised us both. I hugged her. Start over, I whispered. It's never too late to start over. She nodded against my shoulder, then fled. I'd probably never see her again, but I knew she'd be okay. We survivors recognize each other. The rest of the evening blurred. Congratulations, condolences, whispered confessions from other women who'd been slowly disappearing in their own marriages. By midnight, I stood alone in the garden, my red dress like war paint in the moonlight. My phone buzzed. A text from Rosa. The twins are asleep. They don't know yet. Come home when you're ready. You did the right thing. Home. Tomorrow, I'd have to explain to my 8-year-olds why Daddy wasn't coming back. Tomorrow, I'd have to become someone new again, not wife, not victim, but whatever came next. Tonight, though, I was just Camille Monroe, and that was enough. That was everything. The news broke with Sunday morning coffee. Prominent Savannah financial advisor arrested in charity fraud scandal. Brenton's mugshot made him look ordinary. Just another white-collar criminal with expensive lawyers and a thin claim to innocence. The twins found out from a classmate's parent who called to check on us. Mia answered the phone before I could stop her. Daddy's in jail? Her voice was small, confused. Mason stood beside her, 8 years old and trying to be brave. I knelt down, taking their hands. Daddy made some bad choices with other people's money. He has to face consequences. Like when I had time out for hitting Tommy? Mason asked. Similar, but more serious. I pulled them close. This isn't your fault. Nothing changes how much Daddy and I both love you. They cried. Of course they cried. Their perfect world had shattered, and I was the one who'd swung the hammer. But children are resilient in ways adults forget. By lunch, they were asking if we could finally get a dog since Daddy wasn't there to say no. The house felt different without Brenton's oppressive presence. Larger, somehow, like it could finally breathe. I stood in his study, the sanctum I'd been forbidden from entering, and laughed at how ordinary it looked. Just a room with expensive furniture and the lingering smell of cologne trying to mask deeper rot. The doorbell rang. Margaret Harrison stood there with a casserole dish and a bottle of wine. Pot roast, she said, and Pinot Noir, the essential supplies for any proper scandal. Behind her came more women. Sarah Walsh, the senator's wife, surprisingly, Jennifer Coleman from the museum board, Dr. Patricia Yates, who ran the children's hospital. They filled my kitchen with food and wine and something I hadn't expected, solidarity. We've all been there, Patricia said, pouring generous glasses. Maybe not FBI level there, but there. The slow disappearing, the gaslighting, the mistresses we pretend not to see. Why didn't anyone say anything? I asked. What would we say? Sarah's laugh was bitter. That your husband was exactly like ours? That this whole society is built on women shrinking themselves to fit into spaces men design? They stayed until evening. These women I'd thought were just Savannah decorations. Turned out they were warriors in Chanel armor, each fighting their own quiet battles. That night, I found Mia in my bed, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Mommy, are we poor now? No, sweetheart, we're going to be fine. But Daddy said you don't know about money. I smoothed her hair, blonde like mine used to be before I went platinum. Daddy was wrong about a lot of things, including that. Monday brought lawyers, dozens of them. Brenton's team trying to salvage something from the wreckage, mine ensuring they couldn't. The house, it turned out, would revert to me. My grandmother's inheritance had paid for it after all. The foundation's legitimate funds, what was left after restitution, would seed the Monroe Fund. You could take him for everything, Catherine said. Full custody, alimony, the works. I don't want his money, I want my life back. She smiled. That's the most expensive thing you could take from him. Tessa came by Tuesday afternoon, looking young and hollow. She carried a box. These are things you might want, she said. From his office, photos of the kids, some of your old paintings he kept locked in a drawer. I opened the box. My self-portrait from age 21 stared back at me, the one I'd painted after winning the SCAD fellowship. Brenton had told me he'd thrown it away during our first move. He looked at it sometimes, Tessa said quietly. When he thought no one was watching, he'd stare at it and look angry, like it reminded him of something he couldn't control. Why are you telling me this? Because I need you to know I wasn't the first. There were others. Ashley from the club, Monica from his gym, that pharmaceutical rep with the red Mercedes. He collects women like trophies, then resents them for being human. She left the box and walked away. I never saw her again, but I heard she moved to Portland, started over. Good for her. That night, I hung my self-portrait in the living room where Brenton's hunting prints used to be. The girl in the painting looked fierce, uncompromising, alive. She's pretty, Mason said, studying it. Who is she? That's Mommy, Mia answered before she forgot, and then remembered again. Out of the mouths of babes. 1 year later, I stood in my studio on Jones Street, natural light flooding through windows I'd had specially installed. The space had been a rundown warehouse 6 months ago. Now it housed the Monroe Fund for Arts Education and my personal studio, where I painted between board meetings and school pickups. Mom, you're going to be late, Mia called from the front room where she was working on her own painting, a portrait of our new golden retriever, Rothko. The invitation in my hand felt surreal. The High Museum of Art cordially invites you to showcase your work in our upcoming exhibition, Resurgence, Women Reclaiming Their Narratives. Atlanta. Where it all started, where I'd turned down that gallery owner who wanted me to paint something prettier, more marketable. He'd been at the Whitmore Gala, seen my story unfold, reached out the next day with an apology 15 years in the making. I was wrong, he'd said simply. Your work was never meant to be pretty. It was meant to be true. Mason appeared in the doorway, now 9 and somehow taller every day. Mom, there's a man here to see you. Brenton stood in my gallery space, smaller than I remembered. House arrest had aged him. The ankle monitor visible beneath his Italian leather shoes, the gray spreading through his hair like defeat. The children? He said. I'm allowed supervised visits now. I know. Saturday, 2 to 5 at the community center. Rosa will bring them. He looked around the studio, at my paintings covering the walls. The new series was called Excavation, self-portraits at different stages of becoming and unbecoming. The centerpiece was me in that red dress, but painted from behind, walking away from a burning mansion while holding 2 small hands. You turned me into a villain, he said. No, Brenton, you did that yourself. I just stopped editing the story. He moved closer to the painting, studying it like evidence. You look happy. I am. With him? The question came out strangled. I almost laughed. There's no him. There's me. There's the children. There's this work. That's more than enough. You destroyed everything we built. We didn't build anything. You built a prison and convinced me it was a palace. I just burned it down and used the light to find my way home. He turned to leave, then stopped. The twins call you their hero now. Mason wrote an essay about you for school. My mom, the artist who saved us. From what? From becoming like me, apparently. After he left, I sat in my studio surrounded by evidence of my resurrection. The Monroe Fund had already placed art programs in 12 underprivileged schools. My paintings were selling, not for fortune, but for enough. The twins were thriving, in therapy, but thriving. The door chimed again. Lillian Whitmore entered, regal at 74. I have a proposition, she said without preamble. The museum board needs new blood. Specifically, it needs someone who understands that art isn't about preserving the past, but about disturbing the present. You want me on the museum board? I want you to run it. In 5 years, when I retire. She studied my paintings with sharp eyes. You've proven you can destroy corruption. Now prove you can build something better in its place. That evening, the twins and I had dinner in our kitchen. Not the formal dining room Brenton had insisted on, but the warm, chaotic kitchen where paint stains on the table were badges of honor. Mom, Mia said, through a mouthful of spaghetti. Sarah's mom says you're famous now. I'm not famous. I'm just visible. There's a difference. What's the difference? Mason asked. I thought about it. Famous is when everyone knows your name. Visible is when you finally know it yourself. They giggled, not understanding, but sensing it was important. After bedtime, I stood in my studio one more time, working on a new piece. This one wasn't a self-portrait. It was two children, faces turned toward a horizon that looked nothing like Savannah's measured squares and manicured gardens. It looked like possibility. My phone buzzed. An email from New York. The Whitney was interested in the excavation series. I set the phone aside and kept painting. Success could wait. This moment, paint under my fingernails, children safe upstairs, my name my own again. This moment was everything. Outside, Savannah's midnight garden perfume drifted through the windows. The city that had tried to suffocate me now felt like a witness to my becoming. Camille Monroe was painting again, and this time, nothing pretty, just true. The High Museum's opening night arrived with November rain, the kind that turns Atlanta's skyline into an impressionist painting. The twins, now 10, stood beside me in the gallery's main hall, Mia in a green dress she'd picked herself, Mason in a blazer but refusing the tie. "Mom, there's so many people," Mason whispered. There were. Critics from New York, collectors from Chicago, and surprisingly, a contingent from Savannah. The old guard who'd whispered about my scandal now came to witness my triumph. Funny how success sanitizes scandal. "Camille," the voice made me turn. Brenton stood there, his supervised visit hours specially extended for this event. He looked at the centerpiece, that painting of me in the red dress, walking away from the burning mansion. "It's called The Night I Took Back My Name," I said. "I know, I read the catalog." We stood there, two people who'd once promised forever, now strangers who shared children. His prison sentence had been commuted to 5 years probation and community service. The financial crimes were federal, but his lawyers were excellent. He'd never practice finance again, but he'd survive. He always did. "I need to tell you something," he said quietly. "Before tonight, before all this." He gestured at the crowd gathering around my work. "I knew you were talented. That's why I had to diminish it. If you'd kept painting, you wouldn't have needed me." "I never needed you, Brenton. I just thought I did. There's a difference." He nodded, looking older than his 43 years. "I'm moving to California. My brother has a real estate business. Fresh start." "What about the twins?" "Summer visits, holidays if you'll allow it." I looked at our children, laughing with Monique, who'd come from Charleston in an outfit that stopped traffic. They were healing, adapting. They could handle this. "I'll allow it." He started to leave, then turned back. "That painting, the one of you at 21? I kept it because it reminded me of the moment I realized I'd never be enough for that woman, so I decided to make her small enough for me instead." "And how did that work out?" He almost smiled. "About as well as caging light." After he left, I moved through the gallery, listening to people interpret my pain, my resurrection, my truth. The Atlanta gallery owner who'd rejected me 15 years ago stood before the self-portrait series, his assistant taking notes. "The evolution is remarkable," he was saying, "from impressionism to almost brutal realism. The artist's journey from invisibility to presence." "Actually," I interrupted, "it's the opposite. A journey from presence to erasure and back to presence. We all start whole. Life teaches us to disappear. Art is just remembering how to be seen." He had the grace to blush, remembering our history. "Ms. Monroe, about 15 years ago, is done," I said. We both became different people. The crowd grew. Sales were strong. Not that I needed them anymore. The Monroe Fund was self-sustaining, and my teaching at SCAD paid the bills, but each sale felt like validation, not of my worth, but of my stories worth telling. Near midnight, after the speeches and wine, I found myself alone with the final painting. It wasn't for sale. This one was mine. It showed a woman at an easel, her back to the viewer painting a door. Through the door was another woman also painting a door. And through that door, another. Infinite recursions of women creating their own exits. "Mom?" Mia appeared beside me, sleepy but stubborn about staying until the end. "Is that you?" "It's every woman who ever had to paint her own way out." "I don't get it." "You will. Or maybe you won't need to. Maybe your generation will start with all your doors already open. She leaned against me, and I felt the weight of her trust, her faith that I'd keep those doors open for her. The gallery began to close. Tomorrow, reviews would run in papers that mattered. The work would travel to New York, then Los Angeles, then internationally. Camille Monroe would become a name that meant something beyond scandal, beyond Savannah, beyond Brenton's shadow. But tonight, I was just a mother who'd refused to disappear, standing in a room full of evidence that resurrection is possible. The final portrait isn't paint on canvas. It's this: a woman and her children walking out of a gallery into the rain, laughing as they run for their car. Free. Free. The word tastes like paint and possibility, like tomorrow and truth, like my own name, finally, fully mine.